Be patient and think. June 12, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. I am hearing a lot of misplaced frustration and criticism of President Trump and his administration. People are constantly griping, he should do this and he should do that. The armchair quarterbacking has never been more vehement. Invariably, these critics always forget, or don't know the basic truths governing what we are seeing in the news. He can't bring troops into Washington, D.C., without declaring war against it as an independent, international city-state. That would entail declaring war against the Municipality of Rome and Westminster. And that would start World War III. Everything is a bit more complicated than it seems. Get out your copy of any of the 3 federal constitutions and read Article 1 Section 8, Clause 17. There you will see that the government of Washington, D.C., is a plenary oligarchy run by the members of Congress. Anything going wrong in D.C. is their responsibility. So don't blame Donald Trump. Blame Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi. They and their cohorts are the ones responsible for what goes on in Washington, D.C. So, that's why Trump can't just move in 100,000 troops of whatever species and take over Washington, D.C. Next, why isn't he, Mr. Trump, moving more quickly and aggressively to control the riots nationwide, bring the pandemic to its well-deserved end, and exercising executive power to control the slide of our economy into the dustbin? Having both huge federal governmental services corporations in bankruptcy at the same time is the very good reason that he can't do what you expect him to do. Washington is closed down. I told you it would be for 90 days. The 90 days began in March. We are nearing the end of it, technically, on June 17, but officially, on the 22nd. The offices are being staffed by emergency personnel, also known as volunteers coming to the aid of their country. The million-man reserve force that Mr. Trump called up, is all volunteers. So, that puts a new light on things, doesn't it? It's also a fact that the president of a bankrupt corporation is not able to direct its affairs while in receivership. Mr. Trump has to depend on the volunteers and the U.S. trustees for that. But, while this situation may look outrageous, horrible and hopeless, you have to look on the bright side. In the words of Archbishop Viganos, solve et coagula. Break it down and restructure it. You also have to remember what our 2 groups of erstwhile federal employees did with our property in the wake of the Civil War. They eventually used the Public Charitable Trust to collect all private property in a massive trust that they have managed, purportedly, for us. The territorial government doing business as the United States of America retained the equitable title to this trust, while the municipal government retained the legal title to it. When the municipal government's bankruptcy is complete, the legal title will return to the equitable title holder, the territorial government, and the trust will collapse. This action will bounce the territorial government out of its Chapter 11 bankruptcy and leave a huge profit behind. It will also put Mr. Trump in a far better position than he has ever enjoyed, and will bring forward our liens and ownership interest in our own property, both public and private, again. What can you expect from this dawning era? Government reform and restoration of the lawful government. No more need for taxes of any kind, the giant slush funds that have been created and our public interest in the Fortune 5000 produce more than enough income to pay for all the governmental services we will ever need. Gradual repayment of all the taxes that were collected under false pretenses, all the improperly structured mortgages, all the utility bills that we paid for twice, and so on, via prepaid credit accounts. For most people, this will mean that the bulk of their monthly expenses will be lifted off their shoulders, their mortgage, their credit cards, their car loans, their school loans, their utility bills, all paid off on a monthly basis. So, instead of death and disaster, what you are really seeing is the messy part of swamp draining and house cleaning. If you have ever done either job, you should know that once you get started, things go from bad to worse. Somewhere in the middle of a good house cleaning, where you have the furniture all moved out of place and books and bric-a-brac balanced precariously, it looks worse, doesn't it? And if you have to drain a swamp, you may yearn for the peaceful gurgling of slime and nice quiet alligators, after you bring in the bulldozers and excavators and start uprooting trees and digging ditches, too. Yet, in the end, the furniture gets put back in place and the mud drains, and things are much, much better. This process is no different. Be patient and think and keep the faith. Donald Trump has kept every campaign promise he made. Draining the swamp was by far his greatest promise, and from where I stand, he's keeping that one, too. Pray that he is safe and successful. And wait just a little while longer. Links to Anna's articles and resources can be found in the video description box.